In the heart of a land surrounded by green hills and rivers, there lay the ancient town of Igboji, known for its vibrant festivals, loyal people, and powerful gods. Igboji was a place of pride and tradition. Its people were hardworking and the land is very blessed until one fateful season when all began to change. In the heart of the town stood the palace of King Ayinde, a wise and respected ruler. Amongst his many guards, one man stood out, Alade, humble and beloved by all. Quiet in demeanor, a true servant of the people, Alade. Then there was Olusoji, the fearless warrior of Igboji. He was tall and strong, with his eyes like burning coal and muscles shaped by many battles. People said he could fight 10 men at once and still not break his sweat. He had fought off wild beasts, chased away thieves from neighboring lands, and he once even saved a group of traders from bandits on the road to Ijagun, a neighboring town. Olusoji walked with pride, his steps firm like a lion's. He spoke with confidence, his voice loud and full of charm. Wherever he went, people stopped and stared. Women admired him, hoping he would look their way. Young boys followed him, copying how he walked and talked. Men even looked up to him, dreaming of being half as brave as Olusoji was. But Olusoji's heart was already taken. It belonged to one, and that is Princess Omotola, the jewel of Igboji. She was beautiful, graceful, and kind. She loved Olusoji deeply, and Olusoji would do anything to make her smile. Olusoji often tried to impress her. He would lift heavy stones, roar like a tiger, and say boldly, "Even the gods would tremble before me." But then a dark cloud came over Igboji. Crops withered, water turned bitter, and children cried in the night. King Ayinde turned to the great oracle Ifayemi for answers. "The gods are upset," Ifayemi said. "They need to be pleased. Only the Stone of Iji, one of the few holy stones hidden deep in the evil forest and guided by a fierce tiger, can bring back balance to the town. Show it at the Igboji festival, which is just 7 days away." The king called for brave souls to get the stone. Some warriors paused. In fact, many warriors paused until Olusoji, in his usual show and pride, stepped up. "How we go?" he shouted, his voice full of sureness and self-worth. The town cheered loudly. Omotola's heart beat fast. She held her chest as she watched Olusoji marched off, every step showing courage and showiness. The drums boomed like thunder and the people shouted his name, very sure that hope has been restored back to Igboji. With his spear in hand and a bold heart, Olusoji entered the scary evil forest. Here, sunlight barely reaches the ground, and strange whispers floated among the twisted trees. For several days he pushed forward. On the first day, the forest shadows covered him completely, and that is a quiet sign that darkness had taken over. On the second day, he found a skull hanging from a twisted branch, a strong warning for those who dare to come in. On the third day, strange noises followed him constantly. Each time he looked back, darkness grew thicker. Hunger bit at him on the fourth day as he ate bitter roots and drank dew. On the fifth day, he saw huge tiger tracks, a clear sign that the famous beast was close. And then came day 6. The air felt thick as Olusoji pushed through a wall of vines into a clearing. There, a cave opened like a wide mouth, Waiting silently was the tiger, face huge and his eyes glowing like hot coal. A wide fight broke out. Roars, yells, and clash of spears against cloaks filled the air. Olusoji jumped and dodged, striking bravely, every move showing his strength and sureness. With a loud shout that rang through the trees, he stabbed his spear deep into the tiger's side. The tiger let out a final pained growl before falling, and the forest went quiet. Olusoji went into the cave. Lit by a beam of light was the Stone of Iji, bright, bustling with old power. Olusoji knelt down and he whispered to himself, "I did it." On that sixth day, the proud warrior came out of the forest, holding the precious stone tightly, a sign of his faith and a prize for his pride. News of Olusoji's success spread like wildfire through Igboji town. "Olusoji has found the stone! Olusoji has found the stone!" The villagers cheered from hut to hut. Yet in his exuberance, instead of presenting the stone to the king immediately, Olusoji dashed off to Omotola's hut to share his triumph. They sat together, placed the sacred stone between them as they laughed and dreamed of the adoration that awaits them at the festival happening the next day. "The whole town will cheer," Olusoji boasted. We will be heroes." Then there came a thunderous bang outside. Boo! A startling noise that broke their joyful moments. They rushed outside immediately, only to find nothing amiss. Returning to the room, their eyes widened with horror, and they saw the most shocking thing. The stone had vanished. "It was just here," cried Olusoji. Panic and disbelief listened thoroughly in his voice. "What will I tell the people? What will I tell them tomorrow?" Broken-hearted, Olusoji, the warrior of warriors, sank to his knees, whispering, "All I ever wanted was to make you proud. Now I have lost everything." Slowly, Olusoji rose, his face heavy with shame, and after searching for several hours till night, without a word, he turned and walked into the night, sadness clinging to him like a shadow. The next morning, the sun rose slowly over the hills, casting a warm light across Igboji. Birds sang gently, and the breeze carried the smell of wet earth all across the land. Omotola stepped out of her hut, broom in hand and ready to begin her morning chores. She swept quietly, her heart still heavy from the night before. Each stroke of the broom stirred up dust and memories of what happened the day before. She could still feel and see the sadness in Olusoji's eyes, hear the pain in his voice, and feel the weight of the lost stone in her chest. Then all of a sudden, something strange happened. As she swept near the wooden bench outside, a tiny flash of light sparkled in the dust. She paused, narrowed her eyes, and knelt down to take a closer look. There, half buried in the dirt, was a small glowing object. Her heart skipped a beat. She reached out with the shaking hand and picked it up. It was smooth, round, and shining faintly in the early morning sun. It was the stone! Her eyes widened with surprise and filled with tears of joy. "The stone!" she whispered, clutching it tightly to her chest. "It is here! It is the stone! It is really here!" Without wasting a second, Omotola ran as fast as she could. Her feet flew over the dead parts, her voice rising with excitement. "Olusoji! Olusoji!" she shouted over and over. "I have found it! I have found it, Olusoji!" Olusoji was sitting alone beneath the old Iroko tree with his head bowed, still grieving from what happened the previous day. When he looked up and saw Omotola running towards him, his heart stirred. She held out the stone, her face glowing with happiness. "I found it, Olusoji," she said again. Feeling breathless, and for a moment Olusoji just stared. Then his eyes were filled with tears, but this time not of sorrow, but of hope. A wide smile broke across his face. He stood up quickly and laughed. "You found it! You really found it, Omotola," he said, with his voice shaking. "Now I have every reason to be happy again." They hugged very tightly, holding each other like they would never let go. In that moment, their worries faded and their shared dreams rose again, bright and full of life. The day of the Igboji festival finally arrived. The villagers of Igboji was alive with color and sound. Men, women, and children wore their finest clothes, bright wrappers, beads, and painted faces. Laughter filled the air, drums beat loudly, echoing through the hills. Dancers spun and twirled like flowing rivers, their feet moving in perfect rhythm with the drums. At the center of the festival ground stood King Ayinde, dressed in his shining gold cloth, his crown resting proudly on his head. Beside him stood the high priest Ifayemi, his face calm and serious. The king raised his hand and the drums slowed down. The people grew quiet. "Let the hero step forward," the king called out. With his face and head high and chest full of pride, Olusoji stepped out from the crowd. He walked slowly and powerfully, holding the sacred stone tightly in both hands. The crowd clapped and cheered. Some called his name, Olusoji, with joy. He reached the center and knelt. Ifayemi took the stone from him, lifted it high into the sky, and began to chant in the old tongue. The air felt heavy. All eyes were fixed on Ifayemi the priest. Then boom! A loud thunderous sound cracked across the sky. Dark clouds rolled in suddenly. The wind began to howl. Flames from the festival torches danced widely all across. The people were scared and looked up to the sky in fear. Ifayemi's eyes opened wide. He lowered the stone slowly and held it up for people to see. "People of Igboji, this stone is fake," he shouted. A wave of shock moved through the crowd. Olusoji's face went pale. He stepped forward, confused and afraid. "But I found the tiger," he said, with his voice shaking. "I bled for this. I risked my life for this." "Silence!" Ifayemi thundered, with his voice louder than the drums. "This is a lie. This is not the true Stone of Iji." People began to murmur. Some backed away. Others looked around in fear and disbelief. Then, from the edge of the crowd, a voice spoke up. "I have the real stone." Everyone turned. It was Alade, the quiet guard, usually unnoticed. He stepped forward with calm steps. In his hand was a glowing stone, brighter and purer than the one before. There was silence in the air. The crowd was stunned. "You?" Ifayemi asked. His eyes narrowed in surprise. "Yes," Alade replied calmly. "I couldn't sit and watch my people suffer. So I went into the evil forest alone. I faced the tiger, I found the true stone, and I brought it back." He handed a glowing stone to Ifayemi. The high priest Ifayemi held it up once more and carefully placed it on the gods. Suddenly, soft rain began to fall from the sky. It wasn't harsh, it wasn't cold. It was gentle and sweet. The people raised their heads in wonder. The land drank it, and the gods were pleased. The king stood from his throne deeply moved. He walked down the steps with slow, thoughtful steps and stood before Alade. For your courage and love for Igboji, King Aide said, you shall be rewarded. Ask for anything, and it shall be yours. Alade bowed slightly, then raised his head. I asked for Princess Omotola's hand in marriage. A heavy silence followed. The people were shocked. Olusoji's face turned dark with anger. Omotola's eyes were filled with confusion and quiet pain. She looked from Alade to the king and to Olusoji, searching for words. But the king had made an oath, and a king's word must not be broken. So shall it be, King Aide said. That day, Princess Omotola was given to Alade. Alade was also named a chief and given a seat on the king's council. The people clapped, but their cheers were uncertain. Whispers filled the air, and Olusoji stood still, his hands clenched and his heart breaking in silence. One day, a petty thief who had disguised himself as a palace guard to steal food was caught. He was dragged before the king, his face bruised, his hands tied. King Ayinde, calm but firm, gave his ruling. The law is clear, he said. 6 months in the village prison, that is the punishment for deception. But before the guards could take the man away, Alade stood up slowly, his voice sharp and cold. My lord, deception is a greater crime than we think, he said, staring at the thief. Deception is the wind that fans the flames of disaster. Such lies bring ruin to the kingdoms. My lord, I suggest you banish him. A murmur spread through the courts. There was a wave of shock. The thief trembled. Even the birds outside seemed to fall silent. King Ayinde looked at Alade, remembering the day he promised the reward for truth and bravery. He sighed heavily, then nodded. So be it. Let him be banished from Igboji. The guards dragged the man away, and a quiet tension fell over the court. The chiefs exchanged long glances. Some looked troubled and others looked confused. Alade sat back with a slow and wicked smile spreading across his face. But the winds of fortune were shifting. As 2 years passed since Alade married Princess Omotola, the palace was still and cold. No sounds of children's feet, no laughter in the halls. People began to whisper. Alade grew restless and desperate. He tried herbs, prayers, and even offered gifts to the gods, but nothing worked. Finally, in the dark of one morning, he rode out in secret and visited a new native doctor, the one feared for his strange powers. The man's name was Ifakola. Inside a dim hut filled with smoke and bones, Ifakola stared into the fire and spoke without looking up. The gods are not deaf, Alade. They are waiting. Waiting for what? Alade asked. Ifakola's eyes finally met his. For atonement, he said. You must bring 5 live chickens, 1 strong goat, and the Stone of Iji. Alade's heart sank. The stone? Alade asked, with his eyes wide with fear. Yes, said Ifakola, his voice low and steady. You must borrow it only for 1 night, then return it before the sunrise. The gods will understand. Alade nodded slowly, convincing himself. Yeah, I brought the stone to this village. It was my victory. So there's nothing wrong if I take it just for 1 night. That night, the village was asleep. Alade wrapped himself in a dark cloak. He moved like a shadow through the trees, heart pounding. At the shrine, he crept in quickly and quietly. looked round and gently lifted the sacred stone from its resting place. With the stone clutched to his chest, he made his way to the river where Ifakola was waiting. The moonlight was dim, the rock wet and slippery. Alade stepped carefully, but one stone gave way. His foot slid, his arms flew out, and the stone tumbled from his hands. No! Alade shouted, reaching after it. But the stone had hit water with a heavy splash and sank deep into the river, vanishing from the sight. Alade dropped to his knees, shaking. His mouth was dry, his thoughts were racing, and he ran back to Ifakola. It is gone, he said, in a broken whisper. Ifakola's face turned pale. He looked round and fearful of the spirits listening. We say nothing of this, Alade, he whispered. And Alade replied, no one must know. I agree. They nodded to each other, hearts pounding, fear in their stomachs, but silence could not stop the storm. Days passed, then weeks. The sky turned dry, the rain stopped. Cracks spilled the earth. Wells dried up and people grew sick. Babies cried at night and also the crops refused to grow. Sadness returned to Igboji, heavy like a blanket no one could lift, and the gods had turned their faces away. Worried by the dry skies and the growing sorrow in the land, King Ayinde summoned Ifayemi, the royal oracle. The land suffers, the king said. What has happened? Ifayemi didn't even waste a single second. His voice was sharp. The Stone of Iji is gone. The king's eyes widened. What? He shouted, rising to his feet. But the Igboji festival is just 2 days away. Without the Stone of Iji, we cannot honor the gods. He quickly called for the warriors, that's the royal warriors, and once again, Olusoji stood tall. His eyes were firm and his heart ready. He stepped forward without fear, like in the old days. The warriors gathered, prepared to leave at once. But just as they were about to head out, King Ayinde raised his hand. Wait a minute! All eyes turned to look at him. The king looked towards Alade. Alade found the last stone, he said. He knows the way. He has faced the dangers. We need his experience. So Alade, lead them. Alade's face turned pale, his mouth opened slightly. What? You mean me? You want me to return back to the forest? He stammered. The king was firm with his response. He said, yes, Alade, I want you to lead them. You know the way, and I want you to lead the warriors in this journey. Alade forced a smile, though his hands trembled. Yes, my king, I will lead them, he said. But the journey into the evil forest was not for the faint of heart. From the moment they crossed the border, Alade began to fall apart. Each step deeper into the forest was like walking deeper into a nightmare. The tree grew taller, thicker, darker, like they were closing in around him. The wind hissed through the leaves, whispering strange sounds that only fears could understand. Every crack of a twig made Alade jump. Every shadow made him shiver. He held his sword so tightly that his hand shook, but he never for once took it out. Was that a snake? He whispered, his voice trembling. No, one of the warriors said. It is just a vine. But Alade did not believe him. Sweat pouring down his face, soaking his fine robes. His breathing was fast. His eyes were wide like a frightened goat's. I shouldn't be here, he said to himself. I am a chief. I'm not a warrior. This is not my place. Meanwhile, the other warriors stayed focused. They moved with quiet strength, speaking softly to each other and their spears ready for battle. But Alade felt apart behind, looking left and right like something might grab him at any moment. As they reached the ancient cave where the Stone of Iji had once rested, a deep silence filled the forest. Even the birds stopped singing and the wind stopped moving. The air was heavy. Then came a sound, a low growl, deep and slow. Like thunder rumbling inside the ground, the warriors froze. And then it came. Distance away, a tiger stepped out of the shadow, bigger than they have ever seen before. His eyes burnt yellow like fire, his muzzle smoothed like waves under its striped skin. He didn't make a sound. Actually, he didn't need to. The warriors raised their spears. Their hearts raced. Their hands tightened. But then a sound fell. Poof! Alade dropped to the ground. He fainted. Just like that. His eyes rolled back, his sword falling beside him like a toy. Is he dead? One of the warriors asked. No, said another. He's just scared out of his mind. They dragged him under a tree and slapped his cheek, trying to wake him up. After a few moments, Aladdin's eyes opened slowly, and the first thing he saw was the tiger still standing at the cave's entrance watching. Aladdin screamed like a child. He jumped to his feet immediately, eyes wide with fear. He tripped over a roof and fell and stood again. He dropped the sword once more and took off, running into the forest. Let me go home, he cried. Let the town burn, let everyone burn, I don't care. I don't care about the king, I don't care about anybody, but I will not die here in the forest. The warriors stayed and looked at him in disbelief. And one of them said, so much for our great leader. And another one said, wow, he has truly shown his true self. They turned their eyes back to the tiger, grabbing their weapons lightly. While the other warriors were mapping out strategies on how to get to the tiger, Olusoji stepped up, no shaking, no sweating, just focus. He gripped his spear and steady hands and walked straight towards the tiger. The other warriors watched in surprise. No one dared to move or speak. It was as if a spirit of courage had entered Olusoji. The fight was long and fierce. The tiger roared and pounced. Hours passed under the dark canopy of forest. The sound of battle was echoing like thunder. Finally, with one final blow, Olusoji brought the beast down again. The warriors were shocked, very surprised, but then they cheered. Olusoji went back to the cave, picking up the Stone of Iji again. His bravery brought hope to the people, and his deed was celebrated as another sign from the gods. By morning, the old town of Igboji was alive with voices, not just about Olusoji's bravery, but about Alade's shame, his cowardice in the forest, his selfish and wicked words as he ran. Let the village burn? I don't care, I'm not dying here. Those words were flying up and down in the face of every villager. So you mean he would let us die? Some even whispered. The people were furious. Mothers scolded their children for admiring him. Fathers shook their heads, and the elders sat in silence, ashamed that they once honored him. King Ayinde heard it all. He rose from his stool with fire in his eyes. Bring him in. Arrest Aladdin now. The gods rushed to Aladdin's compound, and Aladdin was caught when he was trying to escape. Later at the Igboji festival, the skies above were very clear. Olusoji was carried in on strong shoulders, bruised but proud. The Stone of Iji was glowing in his hands. Drums boomed, horns blew, and children ran beside him with flowers. The whole village gathered, watching with wide eyes as Ifayemi lifted the stone to the skies again. The gods are watching, he said. He placed the stone upon the sacred god. Everybody held their breaths. Then a gentle rain began to fall. The gods are pleased, Ifayemi said, and the crowd erupted with cheers. They danced, they sang, and they praised Olusoji. It was a moment of truth. It was a moment of peace. But it wasn't over yet. From the palace step King Ayinde raised his hand, silencing the crowd. Bring Alade. He was dragged forward. Alade, the once honored man, now with dust on his knees and shame on his face. His head hung low. King Ayinde stood up, voice shaking the air. You betrayed our trust, and you shall be executed. With tears and fear, Alade dropped to his knees. Please forgive me, he cried. The king looked at him, eyes sharp like a blade. But you gave us the first stone, Alade. What now happened this second time? Alade looked up with tears in his eyes. No, I didn't, he said in a very low tone. The crowd exploded in shock. What? What is he saying? He lied? Alade took a deep breath and said, that night I followed Olusoji. I watched from the shadows. He came to Omotola's hut with the real stone. They were laughing and dreaming of the festival, and my heart boiled. I crept to the back of the hut and threw a stick to a metallic pot. It made a loud crash, just enough to scare them outside. I slipped in and stole the stone. But I didn't want to raise suspicion, so I ran to Olakunle, the blacksmith's son. I lied that I found something special for the king, so he helped me shape and faked a duplicate. It looked close enough, just enough to fool everyone. Later I placed it where Omotola would find it while sweeping, and that's how it all started. Why, Alade? The king asked. Because I couldn't stand Olusoji's pride. I wanted what he had, so I stole it. I stole Omotola too. Omotola looking sad with tears all over her face. When we couldn't have a child, Alade continued, I got desperate. I sought the stone again, but I lost it. I failed the gods. I failed everyone. The king stepped forward angrily. So you mean you stole the Stone of Iji from the shrine? Alade nodded regretfully. Yes, my lord. Please, have mercy. King Ayinde turned to his council. Is this not deception? The chiefs replied at once, yes, it is. The king's eyes filled with fire and storm. He said, the law says 6 months in prison, but a wise man once said, deception is a greater crime than we think. Deception is the wind that fans the flames of disaster. We cannot let disaster return. Alade looked up, knowing the fact that the king has used his line on him. His lips trembled and he was so scared. Then King Ayinde said, my judgment is Alade should be banished to the evil forest. Alade screamed, no, please, not there again, I beg you. But the guards took him away, dragging him towards the cursed woods. Anifakola, the crooked native doctor, was also sentenced to 2 years imprisonment. The king turned to Olusoji. You saved this land. You brought back honor. But I hope you have learned something, Olusoji. Olusoji bowed. Yes, my king. Pride must bow before duty. The king smiled gently. Ask for anything. Olusoji looked into the crowd and straight at Omotola. Her eyes sparkled and her cheeks turned red. All I ask is to have back the joy that was stolen from me. All I ask is for Omotola. And the crowd screamed, but this time in joy. Omotola blushed, her hands shaking with excitement. King Ayinde raised his staff. Granted, Olusoji, and I also honor you with a chieftaincy title for your courage and your heart. The people cheered, drums returned to life, dancers spun with joy, children laughed, rain fell soft and sweet. 1 year later, joy blossomed again in Igboji. Olusoji and Omotola welcomed a set of twins into the world. 2 bright stars in the village sky. And so, peace returned to the blessed land of Igboji, where the truth rose, pride fell, and love found its way home.